Welcome to the Godly Business Podcast, where we discuss sales fundamentals with godly principles. I'm your host, Anne Jean Pierre. Today's episode is brought to you by Better Sales Women, where entrepreneurs learn to master the sales conversation and 3x their income. To learn more, visit bettersaleswomen.com. Welcome to today's episode. Happy Thursday. And welcome to April. It's already the fourth month of the year. So, as usual, the time is flying, and this is the second quarter. So, this is the beginning of the second quarter. So, I am hoping you guys are exactly where you projected to be by this time and that you are getting the results that you wanted. I wanted to talk to those of us who may not be getting the results that we wanted and how we could perhaps change or tweak things a little bit to get us back on track. So, as part of the second quarter, the first thing I want to talk about is um, looking at the success of the first quarter. So, going into the second quarter, it is time to go back and look at the first quarter. So, the first 3 months of the year, how did you do? What worked, right? So, whatever worked, whether it was your marketing, your sales strategy, whatever it was, your customer service, your product, which product was doing better, which services were doing better. I want you to go back and look at those things, make a list, look at them as objectively as possible, and then repeat the same thing, right? And try to, this is why it's important to have a plan and a strategy in place, because if not, you don't know what was working, right? You don't know what you did to get those results. It just so happened. So make sure that you look at, okay, what did I do these past 3 months to get me the results that I wanted? Now, the second part of that is, okay, looking at those results that were successful, what are some things that you wish you could have done better to get even better results, right? So maybe as part of your sales strategy, you used to talk to 15 prospects, and of those 15, you close three of them every single time, right? So maybe the for the second quarter, look at talking to 30 prospect. Is that something that is feasible in your time frame and things like that? And see if it's something that you can implement, right? So the purpose of looking at what was successful is not just to, okay, we're going to repeat the same thing, right? Just copy paste, which sometimes that's completely fine, but also look at it as, okay, this was working and this and I was giving it 40% effort. So now let's see what happens if I double that, go from 40% to 80% effort in this particular area. Now, that doesn't mean that the results will double as well, but improvement is improvement, right? So see what area of your business was successful. Try to be as objective as possible and look at you could, what was good that could be great, right? Some things were good. Now I want it to be great. So let me see what I can do to make this whatever was working even better. So that's the first thing. The second thing, obviously, is to look at, okay, my goal in this area was to increase by 2x. Unfortunately, I didn't increase at all. So what happens is, now it's time to look at the areas that maybe were not as successful as you wanted and failed. The point of that obviously is to see what areas that cost were inefficient and were um ir- perhaps even irrelevant, right? So maybe something that you had in your plan for the first quarter of the year, and that you plan on doing for the rest of the year, that you're like, okay, this does not matter, right? This is not moving the needle either up or down. Maybe it's time to remove it. And the reason why that's also important is, one is efficiency, two is um time. People say time is money. I think time is more valuable than money, but you get what I'm saying. Like, if this is something that you're either paying money for, spending time on, or your employee is doing, and it's not moving the needle, sometimes we may have to reflect and say remove it off the equation, right? Because it's not impacting your bottom line. So sometimes it may make sense to just remove it altogether because it's not making sense. So that's one of the things to look at. Okay, what is it of these plans that I put in place for the whole 3 months, these past 3 months, that is not working? That's just not making much sense. So there's that. The other thing is, look at what was not working, obviously, and why it wasn't working, and how you can improve on it. Now, sometimes the why it was not working may be a little bit harder to pinpoint, and sometimes it can be as simple as making tiny little tweaks to your project or your presentation or something like that to see what was not working, to make it better. So an example would be um, customer service, right? One of the things I realize a lot with small businesses, um, over the phone, they miss a lot of opportunities because they don't pick up the phone. And this is something I see over and over again. um, Service-based business, and product sales business. All That's one thing. If you don't pick up the phone, you miss an opportunity to sell, right? If you don't, um, respond back to the customer, you miss an opportunity to sell. So this is something that you may have to figure out, um, a matrix, maybe, if you will, to see how many phone calls you are actually missing, right? So that means how many opportunities are you leaving, right? Now, if you're the only person working, I understand that could be hard, but maybe switching your timing, like the time you work, or maybe getting one of those virtual assistants to get messages when you're not there. Because sometimes, just I'll give you an example of a conversation I was having. Just have now some of the services, obviously it pays, so it may not make sense, but if it makes sense for you, it may make sense to invest in those after hours service call situation, or where it's a program where pretty much if your phone rang 3 times, about a fourth time it rolls over to a live customer service person who can take in the message for you. Now you may be like, what's the point? I could just leave a voicemail and then I'll call them back. But what the study shows is that people feel more comfortable leaving a message with, Shelly, the customer service rep, versus just a random voicemail, right? So even with that, it may be worth it. Also, by doing that, you can also tell, okay, why are 50% of my calls going to this customer service line that you forwarded to, versus my rep, my person in the office not picking up the phone, right? So that can also help you realize, like, hey, these are how many calls are going to this service as a backup, and apparently they're becoming the primary, right? So that's one area that I can think of right off the bat that can maybe make a huge difference on how um, successful your business or services may be, just by tweaking that little thing. So that's just one example. So if you're looking at it from those lens, look at how many other areas in your business that you may be missing those type of opportunities, and where it is that you need to revamp and reconsider. So looking at your current plan, you're going to first look at what's working, look how you can improve on what's working, and then look at what's not working. What's not working, is it needs to be scratched all the way, taken off the table, or is it that you need to tweak one or two things there, and then therefore things are going to work out, and try it again the second quarter, right? So the point is, we're going to improve every quarter, right? Make it a little bit better every quarter, study from our mistake, learn from our successes, and go on. Now, this is still going with the same plan that we laid out, right? Plan A that we laid out, pardon me, and seeing the success. Now, let's say plan A didn't work out at all, and you didn't see what needed. Then at that point, after you do all those analysis that I just talked about, then you may have to look into implementing plan B. Now, implementing plan B, depending on the type of business that you're in, it may not make sense to just scratch plan A altogether. It may be too much of a shock to your system, to your, business system, your business flow altogether, your customers and things like that. So it may not make sense to just boom, change everything, right? But you may have to transition certain things one step at a time. So maybe eliminate line A of plan A. I mean, plan A, eliminate line one, right? So it's like, okay, I'm going to change line one of plan A with line one of plan B this first 2 weeks, and then see how that works. And then you eliminate line two of plan A with line two of plan B in the next 2 weeks. And then slowly transition those things as much as you can to eventually implement all of plan B, and then see how that is translating into your business. Is it doing better, worse, or whatever. And this is also why, if you can, to do testing, right? So maybe implement, like I said, line A, test it out, and then also do line B and test them out at the same time. Play around with it. Like, it's like testing A and testing B, just to make sure which one would make more sense, which one seems to be getting more results. Now, this is difficult because um when you're implementing those things, there are other factors that may be affecting your result that you may not be seeing. But it's a way of like testing before you make a permanent, you know, switch, or just a cold switch to your system that may be too shocking, if that makes sense. So just looking at those things, um, and then also look at, now that we are transitioning plan A to plan B. Um, like I said, you already looked at what was successful. If whatever was successful, now you're implementing some parts of plan B, making sure that, if you, especially if you have employees and other stakeholders, if you will, making sure that everyone's on the same page. And when I say everyone's on the same page, it doesn't mean everyone has to agree with the plan, right? It's just everyone has to understand the plan, and you can even explain the how and the why of the plan change. And it doesn't have to be into details, but like just give an overall big picture reasoning, but making sure your team is understanding why that's important, so that everyone could be on the same page. Um, Two things, because a lot of people, I won't say most people, but a lot of people do not like change. They will complain, and you will have those, even if when you explain the reasoning, they still complain. But you do have those of your team that will be like, okay, that makes sense. Also, before you implement, um, this is something I've learned from corporate America, right? Certain things are from the top down. They make the decision at the top, and then they roll it out to their employee, this is what we're doing. But one of the things I've noticed with certain companies, some of the changes go from down up. And a lot of times those changes are perhaps some of the best results that you can get, and some of them make more sense. Why? Because your first contact people, right? They see what the issues are firsthand. So I remember as part of one of the training that I was having for an insurance company, and it was a small agency, right? And doing the sales training, the group was talking about some of the challenges that they face with the leads that they were getting and things like that. And as we were discussing it, the owner of the business was also there, and he was just listening to what everyone was saying. But the cool thing is, as we were discussing, it was like we were also finding some of the solutions that could potentially be implemented, right? So what did that owner do after this conversation? He went and was like, okay, if you guys think this would work, let's test it out, right? So in testing it out, they found certain things that could work, that could make improvement, and tweaked it. So sometimes the solution to the problem is right in front of you, and it's within your own team that can tell you, like, hey, this is not working. I don't think blah, blah, blah. And, get that feedback from them. And this is a huge, huge opportunity for you to learn, because they are the boots on the ground, right? They're on the floor type situation. Whereas if you're, you know, I know most of the people who are listening to this are like solopreneurs or like, uh, small teams. But regardless of whether you have just you and one other person, or you have a team of 5, 10, 15, getting feedback from your team is very important versus just going at it and just be like, hey, this is what I'm gonna do. It is a blessing when you have others to bounce ideas off of, and to have a discussion and dialogue with, versus just figuring out on your own. Now, I understand as a solopreneur, a lot of times you have no one to bounce it off of besides maybe another business person, but that person is not necessarily in your field. So if you do have those employees, those business partners, it is imperative that you have those type of conversation with them. And for those of you who have employees, definitely get them involved in some of the decision making, or even not decision making, but um, having a better understanding of what the issues could potentially be, and then get them involved to find a solution, because you would be so surprised of how one issue and everybody look at it from a different angle, from a different vantage point, and then they find what the results is. You know what I mean? So super, super important, to get your team involved. All right, so now you got your team involved, you looked at what's, you do your testing, you getting, you know test, line A, B, moving them around, testing them around, transitioning slowly to your plan B, um, without totally scratching plan A, right? So we're still looking into to those things, and moving them. So just make sure that when you're looking at your overall, when you are making those transition and those plan changes, look at your overall goal. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is sometimes we want to do out. Let me rephrase this. Caution your planning and your transitioning and making the changes. You have to make those changes not just based on what makes sense to you, but I would caution you not to do something in your business because it seems trendy on the outside. Everyone, quote unquote, because not everyone ever does something, but it seems like to you everyone and their mama is doing the same thing. They're being successful, so therefore you should try it in your business that you might have success. I do caution you for that, because you you don't really know what people's results are, right? And people tend to overinflate the results that they are getting. So just make sure you don't fall into that trap of implementing something because, like, hey, business ABC is doing this. So, and they seem to be successful. So I'm going to go ahead and implement this in my business because we're in the same field. So therefore it should work. Don't, don't do that, right? If you want to test some of those aspects, um, I would definitely encourage it, but don't just switch things around just because that's what you think everyone is doing. So therefore, that's what you should do. Don't do that. All right. So that was that. And then while you're transitioning to your plan in the second quarter, the other thing that I would um, advise would be to make your plan. One, if you don't have an accountability person, get one, right? But also for the businesses that are newer, right? Like 2 years or younger, um, what are the what are some steps that you would like to let me rephrase this. So we have a goal at the end of the year, right? When we start the year, we're like, hey, I want to make $50,000, right? For in my business this year. And so looking at the first quarter, how much money did we make? Okay, so if we made 5,000 for the whole first quarter, that means we still have $45,000 left to make, right? So what did that translate to every single month? That's about a little over $1,500 a month, right? And that's why I said look at what results worked and things like that. Because if you're looking at controlling for aspects like slow seasons, right? Because some businesses have slower season, but controlling for that, um, did you see a spike? Look at your month and see, did I see a spike in services or calls around this season? Why was that? Was it an ad I was running? Was it a promotion that I was giving? Was it that something was going on around that then impacted me? Things like that. This is part of that first step. But why I'm bringing it back up again is on your second quarter. Is there a way for you to redo those things, but looking at the $1,500? So, for example, let's say you ran a sale for a week, and that week you made $1,500, and that was your whole thing for the month. So next month we're like, okay, we're gonna run it for the whole month to see if maybe we can capitalize on that. When you see those patterns, two things that you have to consider: is it the cell itself, or using this example, was it the cell itself, or was it the price point? Once you look at that, then you have to look at, okay, if it was not just the cell and it is the price point, um does it make sense for you to lower it or maybe increase your um service or product that you offer in order to sell a bigger package in order for you to still get your numbers, right? So those are the price structure that you have to reconsider and seeing, okay, how can I make this second quarter make more sense um through as part of my plan B to reconsider and getting the numbers that I want. But how I want you to do it is kind of like the same thing we just spoke about. I want you to have a daily plan, a weekly plan, a monthly plan, and a 90-day plan. So on your daily plan, you need to have things that are going to move the needle to your monthly plan, right? Now, the reason why I break it down like that, because it's less overwhelming for you, and it also gives you a plan of action on how to make those things happen. Now, some of you guys may be listening and be like, well, duh, but you have no clue how many people like that simple concept did not occur to them. And because especially for people who are super anxious um and have a lot of anxiety, like they look at the the whole thing. It's like, again, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So just do that. Like, okay, I want to save $30,000 for the year. Great. What does that look like? That looks like me saving $2,500 a month. What does it look like? That means $1,200 every 2 weeks. What does that look like? $1,200 every 2 weeks means $600 a week, right? $600 a week. What is it like per day? So when you look at it that way, every time it gets a little bit less, a little bit less, and the task doesn't look so big. So this is why I say, in implementing all of your plan, just look at it the same way. Okay, this is what I'm gonna do. This is how I'm gonna implement plan B. Um, which is going to involve some of plan A, and it may take quarter two and quarter three to really look at how this is impacting your business, because you just rolled out this thing. Now, it may also be that you don't need to implement plan B yet, right? Because yes, plan A was working, and or plan A wasn't working at all, so therefore we're gonna jump right into plan B. Uh, maybe, and we discussed that in other podcasts in another episode. Make sure that you did everything that you were supposed to do in plan A, right? Before you move to plan B. And this is why it goes back to that same conversation of like, hey, look at what was successful, look like what was not successful, because it may not be that you need to throw out plan A. It may be that you were not disciplined enough. It may be that you didn't have the accountability, that your employees were not on par, all of those things before you make changes. Because one of the things I learned in sales is to keep it's cheaper to use your current clients than it is to get a new client, right? So like that whole concept is cheaper to keep her than divorce her. Same and same kind of concept, right? It's cheaper to work with your current clients than to get newer clients. And the same thing, it may be that it makes more sense for you to work out your plan A, because plan B is going to be a shock to your system, and look at, okay, did I not do everything I can in plan A? And now I'm just going to have to roll it out and be more disciplined and, you know, the second quarter to make sure I'm implementing plan A. So that's all I have for you guys today. So I hope you got something out of this. And as we roll up and start the second quarter, so you can focus on what you need to do, focus on, getting the result that you need to, to get down accountability. Almost couldn't say that word. Get that accountability, look at your plans, what's working, what's not working, what do we need to tweak? And hopefully, with everything, you will have a successful second quarter. All right. Well, welcome to April, you guys. I hope to see you next week. God bless. Ask Him to teach you, counsel you, and keep you as you go about your everyday business. All right. Talk to you guys next week.